As we all collectively get to breathe a sigh of relief and say bye, Felicia, to 2023, we know what the Oklahoma State expectations are for 2024, but let's talk about all of the new Big 12 teams. Let's rank them and their coaches. Let's also take some time to breathe in the orange roses of the rarefied times it is to be a Cowboy fan.
You are Locked On Oklahoma State, your daily podcast on the Oklahoma State Cowboys, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Howdy, y'all, and hello, all. Welcome back to Locked On Oklahoma State, your daily stop for all things Cowboy and Cowgirl related. My name is Cody Stovall. I want to thank you kindly for stopping by. We're available on all of your podcasting platforms, visually as well on YouTube. Find me personally on Twitter at AllDayOState. Today, we're partially brought to you by FanDuel. Make every moment matter more with FanDuel, because right now our new customers get $150 back in bonus bets with any $5 money line winning bet. Go to FanDuel.com/lockedon to get started today. We might as well just get started with the announcement of we had our first legitimate portal casualty in backup corner DJ McKinney. Now, when I say backup corner, he logged statistically enough to be a starter at most places, which maybe is part of this conundrum here. But realistically speaking, there's only been two guys that have popped up that were kind of unknown. This is definitely the big one. The other one was the Broken Arrow offensive lineman that I always have trouble with pronouncing his name. It was a little surprising that Billy decided to leave because the grading in practice on him was pretty good. He was one of two freshmen that was pushing for some legitimate potential playing time in the 3 deep. So him leaving was kind of a weird one. It came out of nowhere. DJ McKinney, I hadn't heard nothing. And everyone I've talked to, this one did definitely come out of nowhere. This was a kind of off-the-wall style of decision. Now, we know that we just got another corner/safety in Kobe Hilton from UTEP. The 6-foot, 205-pound defensive back will be able to do a multitude of things, but he's designed to fill that role that is left by Ladarius Webb, who didn't get to play a whole lot, but the packaging that we could have potentially used him for was big time. Nonetheless, if you're kind of upset about the news of DJ McKinney leaving Oklahoma State, you should take some solace in the fact that if you lose one, you gain one. Guys, go check out Reginald Harden Jr.'s film. This guy is a big-time get. He's in the same mold as Leon Johnson. He's already 6'5", 200 pounds, but his story is pretty unique, right? Coming into high school, he was a defensive back, 6 foot, 120 pounds. Then he went to 6'3", 150 pounds. Then he went to 6'4", 180 pounds, 185 pounds. And that's where he basically sits right now. So this dude was a defensive end in high school who had like 91 tackles, 16 and a half tackles for loss, 9 sacks, 61 solo tackles. He was an absolute dude. But if you've ever seen a wide receiver play defensive end, that is precisely what his film indicates. When you look at his high school stuff, it's like, oh, well, yeah, he's a ridiculously fast athlete that is stuck playing defensive end. And then he goes to Florida State. They work him in at wide receiver. They teach him some things. And then he has a pretty big season at Benedict this prior year. And then the Benedict coach who took them to unprecedented heights is taking another job at South Carolina State. So now all of the Benedict players are in the portal. Go check out Reginald Harden Jr.'s film, and you'll feel a little easier about losing DJ McKinney, especially when you take into consideration that Harden Jr. has a couple of years of eligibility left. But let's get back to this rarefied air as an Oklahoma State Cowboy fan. And what I draw to that is this weekend. Normally, as an Oklahoma State fan, when the season's over, it's over. And then you look forward to basketball, or you used to look forward to basketball. Now there's a little bit of a reservation when getting pumped up about basketball, but that's okay because the NFL Cowboys have got us covered. This weekend, we get to watch the Pittsburgh Steelers take on the first place Ravens. Now, the Baltimore Ravens have already shown up their spot in the playoffs, as well as some of the advantages that come with their seeding. The Steelers are playing to get into the playoffs. And if they do pull this one off, if Mason Rudolph and Jaylen Warren can lead the Steelers to a W over the first place in their division Ravens, then they've got like a 96% chance to make the playoffs. And right now, Mason Rudolph is one of the hottest stories of the entire NFL. This was the quarterback that was left for dead that Pittsburgh Steelers fans wanted to run out of town. And they successfully, with the help of Big Ben, were able to torpedo James Washington's career pretty good. And I think they started off doing the same with Mason Rudolph. And now not only do you have this resurgence of Mason Rudolph, but you actually have Pittsburgh Steelers country backing Mason Rudolph and the idea that he should be the starter for this game as opposed to a fully healthy Kenny Pickett. On the other side of the ball, you get Oklahoma State's Justice Hill. Now, how ironic is it that Mason Rudolph used to hand the ball off to Justice Hill? Mason Rudolph used to throw the ball to Tylan Wallace, and now he's on the other sideline, and he gets to hand the ball off to Jaylen Warren. The 1-2 punch of Jaylen Warren and Najee Harris has been insanely impressive. Jaylen Warren has been the more impressive back throughout the course of the season, but Najee Harris seems to have shifted into a little bit more of a Chris Carson style of mentality and to be the Thunder and Lightning package. But I was talking about this with my son. My oldest was excited about this game. And when we were driving, he also started talking about Tyreek Hill and Emmanuel Ogbah and how the Dolphins are pretty fun to watch. And he doesn't miss a Lions game. I don't really get into the NFL unless the Cowboys are starting. If there's Cowboys, Oklahoma State Cowboys starting on the other team, then I'll definitely watch that game. But other than that, I've never really given 13 hoots about the NFL. Kind of until now. Now, I was a Steelers fan when they got Mason and James Washington at the same time. I was like, this is going to be great. And then they did Mason dirty. So, I was out on the Steelers. But now he's had this reemergence as the potential guy. And guys, even if he's not the guy in Pittsburgh, if he wins this game against the Ravens this weekend, Mason Rudolph has secured himself a significantly worthwhile contract somewhere, even if it's not with Pittsburgh. But again, I was telling my son, I was like, Logan, this is rare. When I was growing up, of course, on Thanksgiving, you got to watch Barry Sanders. Of course, in the playoffs, you got to watch Thurman Thomas. Of course, you got to watch the Super Bowl with R.W. McQuarters getting a game-winning, basically, interception. And then you had your Tatum Bells, you had your Vernon Morency's, and you had Leslie O'Neal coming up. But then it was, hit and miss, right? You had Ryan McBean there for a while. And then a lot of NFL Cowboys recently have been making a little bit more of a name for themselves, which obviously in turn makes a little bit more of a name for Oklahoma State. Now, the relationship between Mike Gundy and some of the NFL veterans, it is improving. But not only is the expectation for 2024 very high in Stillwater, Oklahoma, but we get to experience this NFL full of Oklahoma State Cowboys. Guys, this is new. For the younger generation of Oklahoma State fans, it may not mean the same thing. But to us who've spent our entire lives, guys, there has never one time ever that an Oklahoma State NFL quarterback has been leading his team with an Oklahoma State running back. This has never been a thing. Our eyeballs have never had this great of an experience in the NFL. Of course, we've had dudes like Pro Bowl, NFL caliber guys, but never this many. Never this many starting on the same field at the same time against each other. So yeah, 2024 is Arlington or bust, right? That should be the expectation. To me, that is the expectation. When you return over 85% of your roster from a 10-win squad, it's Arlington or bust, at least for us. That may not be the same for everybody, but this is the beauty of the beginning of the years. Everybody's excited. Everybody's undefeated. everybody has the prospects of a wonderful future. But we all know that's not true. It's not everybody. But everybody should and could download FanDuel. Get in on the money-making action, ladies and gentlemen. You already know that FanDuel is America's #1 sportsbook betting partner for a reason. And now that the NFL regular season is starting to wrap up, and you've got all this fun stuff with the Steelers, with the Ravens, with the Dolphins, with the Lions that have a bunch of Oklahoma State Cowboys involved. Right now, our new customers get $150 back in bonus bets, guaranteed, when you place a $5 bet. That's $150 back in bonus bets, win or lose. Y'all, the app is safe, secure, super easy to use. You know, there's a multitude of things you can bet on, from player props to over-unders, parlays. Who can make the best amount of gains in FanDuel? It's up to you. So go to FanDuel.com/lockedon today. Make your first bet the best bet ever with FanDuel.com/lockedon. Go to FanDuel today, the official partner of the NFL. Right? That's a decent segue because we got all these Cowboys in the NFL, right? Okay. So now let's rank the coaches and the teams in the Big 12. Guys, we're going to go from worst to first. We're going to start off with the coaches. Number 16 in the new Big 12's got to be Cincinnati's Scott Satterfield. He is in year 2 now after a 3-9 record. They've been beat up quite a bit in the transfer portal. It's kind of unfortunate for them, but Scott Satterfield played quarterback at Appalachian State. He was then the GA at App State before being the wide receivers coach, running back coach, quarterback coach, also at App State. He also did the same thing, being the quarterback coach at Toledo, as well as the quarterback coach and OC at Florida International. Then he becomes the head coach of Appalachian State, followed by being the head coach at Louisville, who actually had a lot of success at Louisville. Him leaving Louisville for Cincinnati was viewed as a very, very, very big deal. And it was viewed as kind of a downgrade technically, because he was going from the ACC to the G5 before Cincinnati really got their toes dipped into the Big 12 waters. But the dude is 79-54 overall as a coach. He has won 3 Sun Belt Conference titles, as well as 3 Sun Belt Conference Coach of the Year and an ACC Coach of the Year. Sorry, one-time Sun Belt Coach of the Year, ACC Coach of the Year. So he has some stuff in the department of trophies and whatnot, right? He's done some stuff. Number 15, I really like this guy, but you got to earn your stripes. Kenny Dillingham, Arizona State. He's really a cool story, right? He played at Chaparral High, and while he was playing in high school, he was also the offense coordinator for that same high school. So he was the quarterback and the offense coordinator at the same time. Like, you all know, I love the Brian Nardo story just because of his rise through the coaching ranks is very, very unique. Kenny Dillingham's pretty much the same way. And being from the Chaparral, Arizona area, it gave him the ability to be on the Arizona State staff. Then he was a graduate assistant and the quarterback coach at Memphis. Then he was tight ends coach. Then the offensive coordinator at Memphis, offensive coordinator at Auburn, offensive coordinator at Florida State for a couple of years. Then the offensive coordinator at Oregon, where he did a lot of crazy stuff. The re-emergence of Bo Nix coming into this Heisman season. And now he's at Arizona State. Arizona State is maybe on the rise. We'll save some of that. All right. We'll go to number 14. Joey McGuire out of Taco Recum Tech. He's in year 3 now. And it was a 7-6 season, right? A winning season after an 8-5 season, which was a pretty big deal. But that loss to Cal was ugly. It was ugly. They beat up on Cal, and Cal looked ugly, which is fun because Cal was able to steal a couple of recruits from Texas Tech and one from Oklahoma State, actually, as well. So it was nice to see them beat up on Cal. But he's known as a recruiting savant, right? He coached and rose through the high school ranks taking Cedar Hill, which was known as a not winning program that had never even made a playoff game, to 141-42 record and 4 state title games, winning 3 of those and a runner-up. Then he goes on to Baylor, coaches tight ends, defensive ends, then he's associate head coach and linebackers coach before taking the job at Texas Tech. And as you all will know, Baylor was not happy about losing Joe McGuire, primarily because of his recruiting prowess. Now, the reason he's so far down on this list, because of Oklahoma State fan, we all know that you can be really good at recruiting and be really bad at coaching. If you look at Oklahoma State basketball, this is why this has to be tempered a little bit. All right, right above him, Dave Aranda at Baylor. This Cal Lutheran product coming into the season was 23-24 on the year. And then obviously going 3-9 this year did not help. But, he was able to be a graduate assistant coach at Texas Tech. Then he was a linebackers coach at Houston, defensive line coach and DC at Hawaii before being the defense coordinator at Utah State, then the defense coordinator at Wisconsin. And he coached linebackers as well, then the LSU associate head coach and defense coordinator under Ed Orgeron. Obviously helped win them a national title in 2019 when he was at LSU, which was what helped him land the job at Baylor. The saving grace for him is the fact that he won a Big 12 title a couple years ago over our Cowboys. Without that, he might not have a job. All right. Number 12, Deion Sanders at Colorado. He came from Trinity High School. I'm sure a lot of us watched the TV show that he was in there. And then we all watched his meteoric rise at Jackson State, which was actually very impressive. Not just because of his coaching acumen, but he brought in a lot of staff to Jackson State and a lot of recruits that were never thought possible. And then he was able to kind of take some of that to Colorado. They started off on fire. They were the talk of the town, the toast of college football for a little bit. And then, reality sunk in and they realized that they don't have an offensive line. They don't have much of a defensive line. And now he's decided to attack his coaching philosophy through the transfer portal primarily only. It's a bold move, Cotton. We'll see how it pans out. Number 11 on the list, West Virginia's Neil Brown. Coming into the season, he was holding a 31-29 record as coach, but they finished up with a very impressive 9-4 after being picked anywhere from 11th to 14th place in the conference pretty unanimously. Capped off with a massive W over North Carolina in the bowl game. Neil Brown was a wide receiver at UMass and Kentucky before becoming the tight ends coach at UMass, wide receivers coach at Troy quarterback coach and offense coordinator. Then he was the OC for Tommy Tuberville's Texas Tech Red Raiders before taking the head coaching job at Troy. Did a lot at Troy, won Sun Belt titles. He also was 2017 Sun Belt champion and 2017 Sun Belt Coach of the Year before taking his talents on to West Virginia. Very disappointing season last year, just in general, followed up by a very good year this year, which is why we had to take Neil Brown a little bit up the list here. We'll see what the next season provides. Number 10 for me, BYU's Kalani Sitake. He was 61-41 entering the year, following a 5-7 season. I'm sure that's not exactly what BYU fans were hoping to get into, but Kalani Sitake is actually a pretty daggone cool story because he played fullback at BYU. He also got to have a couple cups of coffee in the NFL with the Cincinnati Bengals. Then he was the running back and fullback coach for Southern Utah, linebackers coach for Utah, defense coordinator for Utah, associate head coach and defense coordinator for Utah. Then he went to Oregon State to be the defense coordinator, comes back to BYU 2016, and he was a massive name in the coaching trees to grab from BYU a couple years ago. Obviously, he decided not to do that, signed a new contract, and decided to bring BYU into the Big 12. I believe in Kalani Sitake. I just, this season wasn't a great look. All right. In the top 10 after them is number 9, UCF's Gus Malzahn. Now, some people are going to be like, how is he this far down on the list? That's because he still makes ridiculously boneheaded coaching decisions at crucial times in the games, right, when it comes to punts and mismanagement of timeouts and kicks and so on and so forth. He should not be this good of a coach this far into his career, having Scott Satterfield, I don't know when to kick timeouts and call field goals, problems, but he does. Anywho, he holds a 101-54 record following a pretty decent 6-6 season, but that loss to Georgia Tech was pretty terrible. They didn't just beat you, they beat you soundly, and they controlled pretty much the entire game. But Gus Malzahn is a former Arkansas walk-on who built his name up after a little bit of time in Arkansas as a high school coach. He did so well in high school that Arkansas kind of brought him back into the fold as a wide receiver coach and offensive coordinator. Then Tulsa brought him in as the associate head coach, offensive coordinator, and quarterback coach. Then he goes to be the head coach of Arkansas State. Then he takes the job with Auburn, wins the Sun Belt title, 2 SEC titles, 3 SEC West titles, 1 national championship with Cam Newton. And in 2013, he won virtually every single national coaching award you could win. SEC Coach of the Year, National Coach of the Year, Home Depot Coach of the Year, Sporting News, Rivals, SEC, Paul Robinson, Paul Bear Bryant, and more. Guys, he used to be a big deal. He used to be a big ticket item name. I'm not seeing it. I'm not seeing it. Hopefully he can turn this thing around, but I'm not a big fan. All right, number 8, TCU Sonny Dykes. After taking a 13-2 national championship team into this coming season, holding an 89-72 record, the first baseman, that's right, the first baseman who played baseball for Texas Tech, after playing baseball at Texas Tech, went to the high school coaching ranks. Then he became a JUCO coach for the powerhouse of Navarro. Then he was the Kentucky tight ends coach as well as a GA, Kentucky strength and conditioning coach, or special teams coach, wide receiver coach. Then he goes to Taco Reckham Tech as a wide receiver coach. Then he goes to Louisiana Tech as a co-OC wide receiver coach, Arizona offense coordinator, quarterback coach. Then he's the head coach of La Tech, Cal, SMU, then TCU. Obviously, we all know what he did in 2011, winning the WAC Coach of the Year. He followed that up with, obviously, the appearance in the Big 12 title, but he was the 2022 Big 12 Coach of the Year, the AFCA Coach of the Year, Sporting News, Home Depot, Eddie Robinson, Bear Bryant, Coach of the Year as well in 2022. Played for a few conference titles on top of the one WAC title that he was able to win. Number 7, Iowa State's Matt Campbell. We're year 7 done in the books for the Iowa State Cyclone. He's gone 87-63 up until this 7-6 season that we just had. It was a resurgence, right? A lot of people thought Matt Campbell may have seen his best years behind him, much like potentially some of the fan base with Mike Gundy, myself included. He was able to turn that around, obviously, but the loss to Memphis was, I think, the worst loss of the Big 12 teams in the bowl games. If any of the losses were embarrassing, Matt Campbell's Iowa State loss to Memphis was exactly that. But the Mount Union product and Pitt defensive end went to Bowling Green to be the offensive line coach, followed by the offensive line coach at Toledo, offensive line coach and offensive coordinator at Toledo, head coach at Toledo, and then obviously head coach at Iowa State. He was the 2-time MAC division champion, 2015 MAC Coach of the Year, 3-time Big 12 Coach of the Year, 2017, 18, and 2020, and the 2-time AP National Coach of the Year, Matt Campbell. Number 6, Arizona's Jedd Fisch. Jedd Fisch is actually really fun to research. He's 17-22 as a coach, going into his fourth year, as the head man at Arizona. He's got an NFL pedigree. He was a tennis player, a star tennis player out of the state of New Jersey. His dream was to work his way into the football coaching game just so he could coach under Steve Spurrier. He coached at a developmental school, followed by being a wide receiver coach in Arena League. Then he was the GA for Florida. He got his dream. He got to work for Coach Spurrier. Then he was an analyst for quarterbacks and wide receivers in the NFL for the Texans, Ravens, and Broncos, followed by being the offense coordinator for the Minnesota Vikings, offense coordinator and quarterbacks coach, going back to college for Miami. Then he goes back to the NFL as the Jacksonville Jaguars offense coordinator, goes back to college to be the quarterback and wide receiver coach and pass game coordinator for Michigan. Then he goes to UCLA as the offensive coordinator and the quarterback coach, takes over as an associate or interim. Then he goes back to the NFL and is the associate offensive coordinator for the Los Angeles Rams. Then he becomes the New England Patriots quarterback coach, and now he's the Arizona head coach. So Jedd Fisch doesn't have some of the same, come up in the coaching ranks as some of the guys we've already talked about and some of the guys we still have yet to talk about. His pedigree is considerably different with all of the NFL experience. But clearly, what he has going on at Arizona is kind of a big deal. All right, number 5, Houston's new coach, Willie Fritz. Willie Fritz was a defensive back from Pitt State, holding a 247 and 121 record as a coach. He was a GA at Pitt, followed by being the assistant head coach for a high school in the state of Kansas. Then he was the GA at Sam Houston State. Then he goes back to the high school ranks coaching in Texas. Then he's the GA, he takes over as the defense coordinator for Coffeyville Community College. Then he's the DB coach for Sam Houston State. Then he takes over as head coach for Blinn Junior College, and this is where he kind of takes off. Then he's the Central Missouri head coach, Sam Houston State head coach, Georgia Southern head coach, and then the Tulane head coach. A lot of people obviously know what he was able to do at Tulane before he took the Houston job. But the dude is 7-3 all time in Division I FCS playoffs. He's the 2-time junior college conference champion. He's the 2-time JUCO national champion, 2011 American Football Coaches Association Coach of the Year, 2-time ACC Coach of the Year at Tulane, 2012 Liberty Mutual Coach of the Year, Sun Belt Coach of the Year. The list goes on. Willie Fritz is a developer of programs. Everywhere he goes, he finds ways to make them winners. I don't know that it'll be immediate, but he'll make Houston good. So that's a scary hire. And that's why he's in the top 5. Number 4, KU's Lance Leipold holds a 163-60 record coming into the season. The Whitewater quarterback took the job as the Whitewater quarterback and wide receivers coach right after. Then he was a GA. Then he became the assistant head coach for Nebraska, Omaha, goes back to Whitewater, then Buffalo, then KU. Year 1, whenever he took over for Wisconsin Whitewater, year 1, they go 14-1 and they win a national title. He's the fastest coach in the history of college football at any level to reach 100 wins. After their 14-1 national championship first season, the next year they had a very disappointing 13-2. He followed that up in 2009 by going 15-0. 2010, 15-0. 2011, 15-0. 2012, one of the worst years ever. They go 7-3. How does he respond? 15-0 and 15-0 again and again. He goes undefeated 5 times. He wins 6 national titles. And then he comes to a flailing Buffalo and leads them to 2 conference titles on top of 3 bowl game appearances. And 2 of those 3 bowl game appearances ended up being W's. Then obviously at KU, he took over for likely maybe the worst football program in all of football. Like KU was literally the worst out of 132 teams. They were 132nd out of 132. And then he leads them to a 4-0 start. And then another 4-0 start, which is the first time that KU has opened the season back-to-back years 4-0 since 1915. Then he was able to maintain the Heisman quarterback in Jalen Daniels. Then he was able to maintain the NFL running back in Devin Neal and his counterpart, Daniel Highshaw. They keep all of their wide receivers. Yeah. Lance Leipold at KU's got this thing turning. All right, number 3, staying in the state of Kansas, his sunflower buddy, Chris Kleiman at K-State, 5 years in the books. He was 111-37 coming into this season. After winning a Big 12 title, they have a somewhat disappointing 9-4 season. Like, how cool is that for Kansas State fans to look at a 9-4 season and say, yeah, that's not good enough. We should have done more. We should have done better. But the Northern Iowa DB was a graduate assistant at Northern Iowa afterwards. Then he was a graduate assistant at KU. Go figure that one. Followed by a defensive backs coach stay at Missouri State. Northern Iowa, he was defense coordinator and DB's coach. And then he goes to North Dakota State. And everybody knows what he did at North Dakota State. That's really, really where he made a name for himself, going from defense coordinator to head coach. He was a Missouri Valley Coach of the Year. He was the Missouri Valley Conference champion 5 times. 4 times they won the Division I FCS national title. 2017 Coach of the Year for the Missouri Valley and the Big 12 Coach of the Year, obviously, after what they were able to pull off last season. It made sense that K-State was one of the odds-on favorite to make it to the Big 12 title game. They did not do that. So it was a disappointing season by that metric. Number 2. Our very own, I'm just kidding. It's Utah's Kyle Whittingham. You know, I did go back and forth here, but Gundy does have more wins, and Gundy does have less losses, even if it's only by a handful. Coming into the season, Kyle Whittingham was 162-79. This 8-5 season probably doesn't sit too well. But Kyle Whittingham is the Provo guy. He's from Utah, from Provo. Ironically enough, he was a WAC running back, converted to linebacker, Defensive Player of the Year, and 2009 Holiday Bowl MVP for BYU. Then he was the graduate assistant coach at his alma mater, BYU. Then he goes to be the linebackers coach and defense coordinator at Idaho State. Then in 1994, he was brought into Utah to be defensive lines coach. He was upgraded to safeties coach, defensive backs coach, defensive coordinator, so on and so forth along the way. And then obviously he decided to stick around. He did go back and forth after Urban Meyer left on whether he was going to keep that job at Utah or go back home to his alma mater in BYU. The fact that he stayed is one of the reasons why there is so much animosity in the Holy Rivals war that is that game. And it's really a good thing that we were able to get that. All right. Number 1, our man, our guy. Oh, okay. I can't completely skip over it. I gotta let everybody know what Coach Whittingham has been able to do in the same amount of time as head coach since 2005 at Utah. He was the National Coach of the Year 2008. He was the 2-time Pac-12 champion, Missouri or Mountain West Conference champion, 4-time Pac-12 South title winner, WAC Defensive Player of the Year as a player. He was the AFCA Coach of the Year in 2008, Bear Bryant, 2008, Missouri Valley or MWC, WAC, sorry. Coach of the Year 2008. 2-time Pac-12 Coach of the Year in 2019 and 2021. Bobby Dodd Coach of the Year as well in 2019. The dude's accomplished. All right? Nobody's saying he ain't. But he also hasn't done quite as much as our main man, number 1, Mike Gundy. You know, this took some coming around for me here. But much like Kyle Whittingham, he's an Oklahoma State guy. He's from the Midwest City, Oklahoma area. Came to Oklahoma State. Obviously, we know what he was able to do. He came back to be a wide receivers coach, and then he was upgraded to a quarterback coach. Then he was upgraded to the offensive coordinator, quarterback coach again, goes to Baylor to be the quarterback coach, goes to Maryland to be the wide receiver coach. Then he's the passing game quarterback and quarterback coach at Maryland before coming back home to Oklahoma State in 2001, where he's been ever since, including taking the head coaching job in 2005. Coming into the year, he was 166-79, which is just a few games above Kyle Whittingham, but a 10-4 season does some wonders for you, which obviously put Gundy a couple more win column notches and loss column notches above Kyle Whittingham, which is why he takes the cake here. We all know we won the Big 12 South in 2011. We also were able to win the Big 12 title in 2011. Three-time Big 12 Coach of the Year, 2010, 2021, 2023. He did win the Bear Bryant Coach of the Award 2011, Eddie Robinson Coach of the Year Award 2011, and he was inducted into the Oklahoma Sports Hall of Fame in 2021. So what he's devoid of is just the titles, right? Just the trophies, the championships, and that style of stuff. When it comes to W's, nobody does it better than Mike Gundy. Nobody does. All right. We also did the teams. All right. So let's look at all of the team rankings here real quick. Oh, where'd it go? All right, there we are. Starting at the bottom. Well, it makes sense that their coach is at the bottom. Number 16. No, I'm just kidding. It's Baylor. Baylor, you're very disappointing. And your fan base is the worst. Number 15. That's where Cincinnati sits. 14. Houston. 13. BYU. Oh, I have Houston twice. All right. Well, 11. Texas Tech. Number 10, TCU. Number 9, Colorado. Number 8, Iowa State. Number 7, TCU. Number 6, KU. Number 5, West Virginia. Number 4, Utah. Number 3, K-State. Number 2, O-State. Number 1, Arizona. Arizona, Oklahoma State, all return, and KU, 85-ish% of their rosters. It's going to be pretty intriguing to see how it shakes out. You know, KU has lost some offensive linemen, but they also returned 3, plus the wide receivers, plus Devin Neal, plus Daniel Highshaw. Obviously, Oklahoma State returns Ollie Gordon, 6 of our offensive linemen. We return pretty good amount of talent at the wide receiver position. We return virtually everybody other than DJ McKinney from the defensive side of the ball. But Arizona, they looked the part. They did. And they absolutely boat raced OU, which we didn't do. We barely beat OU. They boat raced OU. And they looked really good in the process. Their quarterback's young. They got a really young All-American wide receiver. Yeah, I think it makes sense. This one went a little longer than typical, but that's okay because we had a lot of stuff to go over here. Now make sure you hammer the like button. All of my podcasting peoples out there, I love you. We came just shy of the goal. The goal on the year was a little over. I wanted to hit 100,000 downloads. We ended up right around 92, 93,000 downloads, which obviously isn't bad. It's just not exactly where we thought we would end up. So this year, 2024, this is the year that we go well over that. So between my first couple months on the job and then my full year last year, we're at like 140,000 downloads. I would like to exceed that, 140K in 1 year. I know, lofty, but let's combine our 12 months with our 2 months, put them together. This is what we get. So that should be the objective. Go hit the daggone like button, leave a review, hit the stars. Everybody out there in podcast country, make sure you're driving safe. But let me know down in the comment section. Do you agree with my Big 12 rankings? Do you agree with the coaching rankings as well? Let me know what you think I got wrong, what I could have potentially sprinkled into some of these. But again, we have very rare times to enjoy as an Oklahoma State Cowboy fan in 2024, not just with the expectations of football, but what we get to witness on the NFL field. And what we got coming still yet in the portal market. We're not done. We'll be all right. All right, y'all. That's all we're going to have for this one right here. You know I love you. As always, God bless. Go Pokes. And thank you for tuning in to make this your first listen here on Locked On Oklahoma State. You could be anywhere. So happy you choose to be here. You know the drill. Later, taters.